Jared Dillian. Own your money, own your life.
I'm Jared Dillian. This is the Jared Dillian Show. If you want to call to talk about your money, please call 844-305-7800. That's 844-305-7800. This is the Jared Dillian Show. So, I want to talk about the magic of compounding. In the old days, you could put money in the bank and it would earn interest. Those were the days. That was awesome. Can you imagine if interest rates were 8%? Where would stocks be if interest rates were 8%? If you could get a guaranteed, risk-free 8% return. I remember when interest rates were 8%. I was about 8, 9, 10 years old. You know, it was like 1982. And, you go in the bank and they'd have one of these signs, you know, where you kind of snap the letters into place and they would have all the different interest rates. And I remember going into the bank as a kid. It was a small bank. It was called Norwich Savings Society, which was eventually bought by People's Bank of Connecticut, which is PBCT, and that was recently bought by something else. So there's some consolidation going on in the banking industry. Let's talk about the rule of 72. Now, first of all, let me explain how compounding works. Let's say you put $100 in the bank, and let's just say, hypothetically, that interest rates are 10%. So at the end of 1 year, you'll have $110 in the bank. Terrific. Now, let's say you leave the money in the bank for another year. At the end of year 2, you don't have $120 in the bank. You have $121 in the bank. How does that work? Well, the first year, you're earning 10% interest on $100. 10% of $100 is $10, so it's $110. The second year, you're earning 10% interest on $110. So 10% interest on $110 is $11. So 110 plus 11 is $121. So you're not just earning interest on the principal amount, you're earning interest on the interest. And the interest on the interest, I mean, if you leave your money in the bank for a long period of time, it just starts to explode over time. That's where that quote comes from, which is probably misattributed to Albert Einstein, where he said that the eighth wonder in the world is compound interest. I don't think he really said that. Compounding is interest on interest. So we have something called the Rule of 72. And the Rule of 72 is a simple way to determine how long it will take to double your money through the process of compounding. According to the rule, if you divide 72 by the annual interest rate, the result will be the number of years it will take to double your money. Let me say that again. If you divide the number 72 by the interest rate, the result will be the number of years it will take to double your money. Okay? So in the example that we were talking about where we had 10% interest, if you expect a 10% annual return, 72 divided by 10 is 7.2 years to double your money. That's not very long. That's pretty crazy. Okay, so right now, interest rates are 0, so it will take infinity years for your investment to double. In fact, it just never will. Now, let's say you have a 5% return. And this also applies to stocks and bonds. It's not just... Now, the thing with stocks and bonds is that you're dealing with expected returns. You're not dealing with actual returns. You're dealing with expected returns. So if you have a portfolio that has a 5% return, that's about 14 years for your investment to double. Now, if you want your account to get bigger, you are mostly going to have to contribute more. Now, the FIRE people counted on this rule of 72, and we just talked about Mr. Money Mustache and his ideas about pizza, but the FIRE people also have some, interesting ideas about investing. They assume that the stock market has a 10% return and that their investments will double twice in 14 years, and then they will retire. And maybe they will be able to do that going forward, maybe not. Stocks are pretty expensive. I think returns are going to be lower going forward. So, like I said earlier, I used to go in the bank when I was a kid, and there were 8% interest rates. So let's do the rule of 72 with 8% interest rates. That means you double your money in 9 years. So in 1982, you could have doubled your money in a bank in 9 years. Does this give you sort of any idea as to how screwed up things are right now? Because that's the way it should be. You know, you should be able to earn interest on your deposits. And just think, someday we might have negative interest rates. They have negative interest rates in Europe. The overnight rate is negative 40 basis points, or 0.4%. And Christine Lagarde, who is the head of the ECB, has said that the benefits outweigh the costs of having negative interest rates. They have no intention of raising interest rates anytime soon. They probably won't raise interest rates as long as she's in charge. Okay. So that is the rule of 72. But the magic of compounding, you know, one of the things I talk about on the show is the idea that you should leave your investments alone. You should buy and hold and let them compound over time. You know, and people do this, and I get a little frustrated with this. We have these people on Twitter, and they say this stuff like, you know, if you had invested $10,000 in Amazon in 1996, then it would be worth, you know, $100 million today. Yeah, I get it. Nobody does that, okay? Very few people do that. Some people do that. But you really, I mean, the thing is, here's what happens. You know, you buy a stock, and it goes up 100%, and you're like, whoopee, the stock went up 100%, I'm going to sell it. And then it goes up 100% many, many, many times after that, which is why I say you should buy stocks and leave them alone. And in any portfolio, if you have a portfolio of 20 stocks, 18 of them are going to go up a little bit. One of them is going to go to zero, and one of them is going to go to infinity. And the one that goes to infinity is going to dominate the returns of the portfolio, and that's where you get your positive returns. So, again, 8% interest rates in 1982. If you go back a couple years before that, 1979, 1980, you had 14% interest rates, although that was abnormal because we were dealing with a lot of inflation at the time, and Paul Volcker had raised interest rates to try to crush the inflation. You know, even if we had interest rates of 3%, we would be a lot better off. I'm Jared Dillian. This is The Jared Dillian Show.
Jared Dillian. Own your money. Own your life.